ABC, CBS, and NBC News have all been put on notice. The Dinosaur legacy news media, with their gatekeepers, their secret agendas, and their efforts to mitigate and operate for one particular side, are coming to an end. Podcasts are taking over, and now the presidential election hangs in the balance with Joe Rogan and the Joe Rogan Experience. We'll explain right now. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Pro Channel, and boy, oh boy, do we have a treat for you. Valiant Renegade is here with us, and Valiant, it has been too long. It's not often that you and I get to share the same screen together here on this channel. We get to do the Renegade Online show every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern, or 5 at Central, as you say, but it's just not very often anymore because we're so busy, schedules are so hectic. But this is such a huge story, and I'm so happy that you've taken the time and we've managed to make our schedules combine. Welcome aboard, Valiant.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And folks, if you're not yet subscribed to Valiant Renegade, well, you should be. He is the voice when it comes to everything Hollywood and finances. And by the way, Valiant is the man who started the entire phenomenon of watching the earnings calls when it comes to the Hollywood studios and corporations. And he has been so successful that some of those companies have actually shifted their schedules as he outperforms the companies themselves. He's been on Gutfeld, on Fox in terms of being mentioned. He's been in all kinds of places. Fantastic, and we're happy to have you. All right, let's pick your brain and get into the expertise. Folks, as we do, consider clicking that like button. Here we go. All right, from Collin Rugg over on X. Some of you call it Twitter still. I don't know. We'll call it whatever you would like. It says, breaking. Donald Trump will appear on Joe Rogan's show, which is set to be filmed in Austin, Texas on Friday, according to Politico. Rogan has over 14 million followers on Spotify, with the #1 show in the world. The development comes after it was rumored that Kamala Harris may also join the show before the election. During a previous episode, Rogan admitted that life was better off under Trump. All right, let's go now to Politico and see what they're saying about this. Alec Issenstad says Rogan has more than 14 million followers on Spotify. But folks, I'm here to tell you, Spotify is just part of the basket. He's huge on YouTube as well, and he's reworked his contract recently so that YouTube can be a much bigger part of the full cacophony, the full kaleidoscope that is Rogan. But it says Rogan, who has more than 14 million followers on Spotify, has long occupied the top positions in national podcast ratings, and Trump's appearance on his show continues the campaign's push to win young male voters. Now, Trump's been on a bunch of big-time podcasts, but Rogan, of course, is the big one. How big is he, Valiant? Well, take a look at this. Out of JRE Library, most watched Joe Rogan Experience episodes. Elon Musk with 69 million views. Bob Lazar and Jeremy Corbell, 60 million. Edward Snowden, 38 million. Neil deGrasse Tyson, 38 million. Folks, if you don't think that this is going to top them all, I don't know what to tell you. This is easily going to top all of these. And the top 10 Joe Rogan Experience episodes have 400 million views on YouTube. But remember, we're just looking at YouTube. We're not looking at Spotify. And he's primarily on Spotify. Now, Valiant, why that matters is this is a deal breaker. The Harris campaign is going to have to figure out a way to get her on Rogan. I don't know how they're going to do that because it's very risky for her for reasons that we don't even need to go into, but it's obvious. Trump's going to be on there. We don't know if it's going to be an hour, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever. He's still going to have the opportunity to show his versatility when it comes to conversation. It'll be so different than if he appears on one of the legacy dinosaur news media organizations. And Valiant, what I wanted to ask you is, do you believe this is the end of an era now that Joe Rogan is the destination? He's the place, he's the coveted spot to go to if you're a presidential candidate. Are we in a new era where the dinosaur media is going extinct?
Well, in terms of relevance, I think they have been for some time. I think Trump's ascendancy back in 2016 from becoming just himself to where he became the presidential nominee that year when nobody expected that he would. And then nobody expected him to actually win even after that. It goes to show you that Trump is unique in the regard that he is arguably the first candidate, at least in the modern era, that the major national news media did not themselves create. You think about Mitt Romney, you think about John McCain, specifically sticking with the Republican Party for a minute. Those candidates were set up to be the nominees, for good or ill. That's a different debate. But they were ingratiated to the audiences out there by the national news media. Trump was not. Trump was ridiculed. Trump was slammed by the national media. They had no hand in his rise in popularity whatsoever. They worked against it vehemently. So Trump is which is why the media has not been able to this point, 8 years later. They are completely unable to do the one thing that they've been desperately trying to do since day one, and that's to tear him down in the eyes of the public. They've only made him more popular by hating him. So yes, I think at least what Trump has shown is that you can rise to this level of national popularity without having any national news media or any major media really on your side or in your corner. It's all about reaching the audience directly. It's speaking straight to them, whether it's on social media or going to places like the Joe Rogan podcast and bringing your message there that bypasses that traditional media outlet. So yeah, I hope it becomes, or it should become, a roadmap for the future for any future candidates, especially for national office like this, to show that you don't need the major three traditional networks, the NBC, ABC, CBS. You don't need CNN. You don't need a lot of these type of places. You just have to be able to deliver your message in other ways effectively. And this is one of the reasons, obviously, that these same outlets can't stand things like Twitter, now X, because of Elon Musk. He is really bypassing them, and he doesn't make any bones about the fact that X is the number one site where people collect news on a daily
drives
basis.
Them crazy. Drives the legacy people crazy. Valiant, I want to show you, to your point, just how much the legacy dinosaur news is irrelevant now to the conversation. Mm-hmm. Take a look at this. Out of Deadline, this is by Ted Johnson. It says, World News Tonight again tops season ratings, but all networks see year-over-year audience erosion. Now, that's already crazy to hear that during an election year, because this should be the Super Bowl of all Super Bowls. I've said that before on the channel. And one of the reasons that we're covering this is because news and the ratings and the revenue it drives from advertisements, all of that feeds into the entertainment companies. And Joe Rogan, by the way, is not strictly news. Podcasts such as Joe Rogan are also entertainment. So explaining entertainment, keeping you ahead of the culture curve, requires us to be here for a moment. I want to show you this, though. We're going to scroll down. I want to show you how many people are watching. Okay? Mm-hmm. So if we go to the 23 through 24, 2023 through 2024 season, World News Tonight averaged 7.72 million viewers. Mm-hmm. In other words, and it's leading, right? In other words, it is getting about one-tenth of Joe Rogan's top performing podcast, but only on YouTube, okay? Not including Spotify. So take a look at this. Out of CBS News by Kaya Hubbard. How many people watched the presidential debate? Ratings are in for ABC's Trump-Harris showdown. How many people viewed it? More than 67 million viewers tuned into the presidential debate between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris. But guess what? It was across 17 stations.
Right.
In other words, it was everywhere. You couldn't find something on TV that wasn't the presidential debate. Everywhere, every channel was playing it. They picked up 67 million. To go back to the JRE thing for a moment, I'm telling you, it's going to beat Elon Musk. And that's why now the question is not who's going to host the debate, who's going to host the debate. It's who's going to go on Rogan first. And that changes everything in terms of the way that we view podcasts, in terms of the way we view Joe Rogan or PBD, right? PBD, by the way, they're the ones who got this, I think, to happen. Want to give them full credit. But I got to say, Valiant, as we look at the future and where podcasts are going, there's no way, I think, that you can logically come to any other conclusion than this is a good thing for the nation, because having our politicians sit down for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it might be, to have a long format discussion that goes in depth, where you can no longer hide behind 8-minute quick clips, go to commercial, where there's no edits, where it's just straight up, here's a human conversation. That's good for us. And so I welcome this if we can possibly move to a future where podcasts are the way for candidates to reach out to the electorate. What say you?
I think they will be. It doesn't matter at this point. They have to be. I think after this year especially, it doesn't matter what candidate it is. If you're going to avoid modern media, that is to say the non-professional, traditional, large format, multi-billion-dollar journalist corporations, then you're going to struggle in the polls because you're not going to be reaching the audience. If you look at the demographics of most of the major broadcast networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, you're not going to find that a tremendous number of the audience is of, say, 40 and under. That demographic is largely looking at things like social media. They're largely looking at things like YouTube and other such places to consume news and politics. Not saying they're totally gone from those traditional industries, but they are certainly gravitating more and more each year towards these more modern avenues of consumption. So you have to go this route. I think that trend is going to continue, and I think if any effect, now granted, this year was, many would call it an act of desperation, which I would tend to agree with how Kamala Harris was thrown in at the last minute. It's not a big secret that Joe Biden had his issues for several years. They tried to hide it. It wasn't working. They had to downshift at the last minute. And Kamala was, arguably, unfortunately for them, the only viable option they could do without causing a tremendous amount of ridiculous infighting and making things worse. Is she the most viable candidate overall? Probably not for the Democrats, but this is the hand they dealt themselves. To your point, having Trump be able to go onto these podcasts and do these interviews, he can sit there for an hour or 2 hours and discuss things. And no, not everybody likes the way he discusses things or the way he says things, and that's fine. It doesn't clearly matter at all because he's still very, very popular. Kamala Harris doesn't have that capacity. Let's be honest. She has had, I don't know how many interviews at this point that have been cut short by her own handlers because she would fall apart after a few minutes. And
the Brett Baer, that conversation was disastrous. Flat out, total train wreck.
Yeah, and I mean, we played clips on the live show the other night of her just kind of cackling incoherently or talking incoherently. Many would say that she, it's more than one occasion that she has been slap drunk during these interviews or these town halls. You can tell it in her speech. She's not able to handle that type of interview format, which is why the debate between her and Trump was so heavily, my terminology would be pre-rigged to her favor, to where microphones would be cut off, this and that. All the questions were set up by the obviously very biased moderators. It seemed like there was no way that Kamala was answering these questions without having known exactly what they were going to be up front.
Well, and we got to say, too, David Muir and Lindsay Davis. Lindsay Davis was interviewed by LA Times, I think, and she admitted that they practiced, they rehearsed fact-checking Trump, and that the motivation to do so was basically just to prevent another CNN debate-style outcome. So that's totally biased. Valiant, I want to ask you. So we don't know, right? This is a guess. But if you had to make a bet right now, will Harris go on Joe Rogan to try to match this? Because I just don't see. I mean, both ways here are immensely risky. If she doesn't go on Rogan, I think this is such a big deal that it really does damage her. Almost like if you tried to skip a debate, like if you tried to skip a pre-promised, determined debate, and then if she goes on, man, oh man, how bad that could go. So I don't know what they're going to do. What are they going to do with it?
The risk is greater to her at this point if she were to go on, because she's not, to be frank, she's just not intellectually capable of handling it. She cannot sit there for 1 or 2 hours and have a back and forth with somebody like Rogan. It's just, without sounding incoherent and ridiculous. That's kind of her hallmark, because she is kind of incoherent and ridiculous. I mean, you take the politics out of it aside, she oftentimes rambles off a bunch of nonsense and gobbledygook. She makes herself look worse and worse. And right now, she's collapsing in the polls, both at places like Rasmussen. You can see some of the gaps starting to widen if people look at Polymarket, things where people actually place bets and trade actual real money.
By the way, the Polymarket thing is why I think she might have to try going on. It's a Hail Mary, but she might have to.
But if she does, that's the thing though, is that I don't want to dismiss out of hand that her handlers aren't entertaining the idea. I'm sure they are. The problem is that I would imagine if I was in their position, you have to be honest with yourself. You have to know it's a tremendous risk to put her out there in that type of uncontrolled format for that length of time. If this was a 20-minute segment or something like that, sure, you roll the dice. But when you're potentially talking about an hour or two, it's very dangerous for her. And if I'm her handlers, I'm talking to Joe Rogan about, well, we're going to put up some barriers. You can't ask about this, or we're only going to do this for 20 minutes or something like that. You're going to try to set the interview to where it would potentially, I don't want to say favor Kamala Harris, but would certainly help her out. The question then becomes, would Joe Rogan and his crew be willing to agree to that? And if Harris and her team does that, then of course the story is immediately going to come out, because it's going to be blatantly obvious if she does it that way, that, well, Donald Trump sat down with no strings attached and had this conversation with Joe Rogan. Kamala Harris went in with all of the bumpers and the guardrails up and was so chicken she had to leave after 20, 30 minutes. There are so many things that could go wrong with this. Here's the thing, and I think this is why you bring up, we're talking about why Trump is doing it. Well, I think, does Trump need to go on Joe Rogan right now to boost where he is? I mean, anything for him like that is a help, but he doesn't really need it. Kamala Harris does. But I think it's a voter enthusiasm play. I think that's why he's going on. It could be. I think it's more of an issue of what exactly we were just talking about. The reason Trump is going to go on this show is because he knows damn well that Kamala Harris isn't going to do it. For all the reasons we just said.
That's fair.
And by him going on the Joe Rogan podcast, it's almost as much, if not more, about putting the onus on her to go on there than it is him being on there. And I think there's more damage there to be done with Donald Trump doing this show, putting Kamala Harris in a very bad corner, to where she has to put up or shut up, and really either option for her is almost a no-win situation. So I think part of the reason you do this and you go on Joe Rogan's show, apart from the notoriety, right? Short of Donald Trump getting on the show and just completely whiffing, which seems unlikely at this point, but it could happen. It certainly could happen. But it's more about keeping or putting Kamala in the corner to where she's got to make a decision whether or not she goes on. And if she goes on and it's a disaster, it's a win for Trump. If she refuses to go on or whatever, it's a win for Trump. So basically, Donald Trump is in control of the narrative here. As long as he goes on there and he does a good job with the interview, makes some good sound bites out of it, and people, watch it and drives his poll numbers up, there's no losing for him here. There is for Kamala Harris, whether she goes on or not, and that's key.
Well, I'll tell you this. One of the good outcomes of this all would be if in the future it's sort of a requirement nationally to go on these kinds of podcasts, because then what you could say is, we can no longer have candidates who are incapable of doing a 2-hour conversation. You and I can do a 2-hour conversation. A huge number of people across America could do a very coherent, cogent 2-hour conversation. It's a minimum requirement of a presidential candidate. You got to be able to do a talk. You got to be able to be honest. And I'll tell you this, Valiant, the other really cool thing about all of this, Joe Rogan was on the Tom Green podcast back when the internet was brand new. Back in 2007, when it was just barely even feasible to do a podcast online, Tom Green started this thing. Joe Rogan appeared there and said, I got to figure out how to make a living doing this. This is so cool. And look where we are. He's not just making a living at it. He is now a kingmaker or queenmaker when it comes to presidential candidates. It is so phenomenal to watch the paradigm shifting away from the dinosaurs, the ABCs, the CBSs, the NBCs, and going to the real people out there, the Joe Rogans and more. By the way, Valiant, I want to congratulate you as well because you've been doing a phenomenal job here on YouTube. You've caught the attention of so many. And Valiant, for those who don't know, because we do have viewers all the time joining for the first time, you are the one who caused me to be on YouTube. And you not only caused me to be on YouTube, you not only pulled me kicking and screaming onto this thing, but you are also a financial backer and supporter of thatparkplace.com. You are a true mover and shaker when it comes to everything, telling the truth and getting analysis that's accurate out there about Hollywood and entertainment. Valiant, I'm not sure that people fully comprehend what a force you have become in the YouTube scene. But thank you for all that you do. It's amazing. Tell the folks out there about your channel and the fun that we have over there.
Well, we do a live show every Sunday and Wednesday night at 5 p.m. Central, 6 Eastern. So we'll have one, as you're seeing this video, probably Wednesday. We'll have one this evening talking about a few things. We're in earnings season right now, so we've got a lot of things coming up with Paramount, with Comcast, Walt Disney earnings call, which the live stream for that is already set up. That's November 17th in the morning around 8 a.m. Eastern. Comcast and Warner Brothers and Paramount are a week or two before that. Next week we'll have some news. The next week's Wednesday show, I'm sure we'll be talking about Ubisoft in their earnings call, which will be that morning.
That's going to be great.
Yeah, so
they're doing well.
Yeah, they're doing great. So I was almost going to do a video on that tonight.
Can you really call it an earnings call at that point?
Well, it might be a sales announcement. It might be, we're going private. We have a proposal for the shareholders. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
I wish their games were private. Get them out of the public sphere.
They might be soon. They might take them private, and then with 5 years later, they'll all be fixed because after Tencent steals the company for quite literally pennies on the dollar, everything will magically turn around after they broke it, so they could devalue it to the point where they could steal it.
And folks, if you want to know what Tencent means, it basically means China. So
China.
There you go.
China. Yeah.
All right, folks. So get over there, subscribe to Valiant Renegade as fast as you possibly can. He is making waves all the time, and the analysis is fantastic. You can catch me over there Sundays at 6 p.m. Eastern, and whenever I'm so lucky to join at other times as well. Folks, you can also send this sucker all over the fruited plains of YouTube by clicking the like button, share, subscribe, click it, and stick it to those pesky algorithms. It's the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts. And folks, this Joe Rogan Trump thing's going to happen on Friday, we hear. And then perhaps by Saturday, the YouTube videos will be coming out on it. We'll give analysis of it if it is so appropriate. Remember, we're not a political channel. We don't wade into the partisanship. However, when it comes to ratings, when it comes to revenues from advertisements, when it comes to the marketing, everything entertainment, we're there. And this is entertaining as all get out. So we're there. Folks, until the next time, keep learning, keep growing, and as always, keep having fun.
Wilton, what are you doing?
Well, word on the street is the culture war has officially made it to the doorstep of that Park Place. And I realize Jonas has no one there who loves him. So I thought I should go and protect them.
Yeah, okay. That's not, how you do this, right?
Do what? Fight? Don't worry, Floral. I will not be intimidated by a criminal threat.
Threat? Wilton, don't be ridiculous.
What does it matter to me? I have only one life to lose.
I mean, I totally expected you to die walking into traffic, but,
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
Okay, just stop. This is just nonsense. You already have one of the easiest and most effective tools and weapons at your fingertips.
My axe?
No. The truth. Stay smart and ready to tell and share the truth by keeping up to date with WDW Pro, That Park Place, as well as Valiant Renegade. Don't
And
do...
Jonath? I mean, he does things with Vash, and that's not very reassuring. That's like putting two helpless chipmunks into a piranha pond.
That's neither true nor accurate. Unlike the team from That Park Place.
Sue me.
Ugh.